Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. To begin, I think I should explain to some readers the difference between the deep web and the dark web. The deep web was a place that was accessible online by the use of special web browsers such as Tor that contains less than legal things such as drugs, human trafficking, and hitmen for hire. The dark web was pretty much everything that was no longer available by conventional means, such as military websites and other sites that have not been incorporated into the current internet architecture. With that in mind, I would like to convey to you all my story of my accidental journey into the unknown space known as the dark web. I'm a computer technician by profession. I work for a company that was contracted by local businesses and private consumers to set up internet connections, install software, and repair any sort of computer problems that they can come up with. So, naturally, I got all the crazy stories and problems that these people could come up with. I swear, some of these people just don't know how to work a computer, even in this day and age. Well, anyway, one day I got a call from a local business complaining that their internet was acting up and that they must have a virus. So, I shook my head, thinking that someone must have unplugged the network cable or downloaded a Trojan horse accidentally. I got up and drove over to the business to address the problem. As soon as I arrived, the man who called me immediately spotted me and started going on and on about hackers and how much he hated Microsoft Windows and how many viruses it created and all that nonsense that I usually receive when addressing business problems. He led me to his computer and I pulled out my laptop and sat down in front of it and I began to work. He told me good luck and walked away to go do whatever it was he did in this downtime. I opened up the browser he used, no surprise, and it opened to About Blank. It didn't even have a homepage, so I tried connecting to google.com. 404 error. Well, I know that google.com definitely existed, so there was a problem with his internet connection. I opened up his network and sharing center to see if I could use the built-in troubleshooter to diagnose the problem. But I gave myself a well-deserved facepalm when I saw that he wasn't connected to any network at all. So, I searched for networks and found a few wireless connections for him to connect to. They were all WEP encrypted, and I was almost positive that he didn't know the key. So, I broke out my laptop and I ran a cracking tool to get his computer up and running again. As I was waiting for my tool to find the key, another network suddenly showed up on my computer. This one unprotected with an SSID consisting of a random hexadecimal string. Now, I was extremely bored waiting for this guy to return, so I decided to connect to it and take a little look around to see where it was coming from. I connected without problems and opened up my toolkit of cracking tools to see if I could find a source for this connection. As I was having my fun hacking away at this unprotected network, my computer froze up, albeit only for a second or two, but this didn't happen much, and it caught me by surprise. I shrugged it off as the poor internet speed there, and I just kept on going. A couple minutes later, however, it happened again, and a few minutes after that once again, each time getting longer and longer. Weird, I thought to myself. What's with this network? It was then that things started getting really interesting. After the long string of pauses, my screen flickered a little bit, and out of nowhere, my browser opened by itself. Now, I was worried that I had somehow infected my computer with some kind of malware by connecting to this network, and I proceeded to close the browser and began to disconnect from the network before anything worse could happen. But I couldn't disconnect. No matter how many times I clicked the little disconnect button, my computer didn't respond, despite everything else on my screen running fine. Fuck, I thought to myself. This is gonna be a long day. And just as I was about to hit the power button on my laptop to perform a hard reset, my browser opened again, this time with a little chat box open. Hello. I stared at the screen for a couple seconds, not quite sure what was going on. I want to talk to you. Now, I had heard about those AI programs that had these program responses to simulate conversation with people, and I was not impressed. This was one nasty virus. You need to leave this network now. This is your last warning. Maybe an automated security program designed to keep hackers out? I'll have to admit, I was impressed with it. I had never seen anything like this before. I'm telling you one last time, leave now. I don't know what made me do it, but I responded to the program. Or what? The next response scared me more than anything in this world ever had. The program began listing information about me. My name, address, telephone number, credit card information, my parents' name, their address, and my heart sank in my chest, and all the color immediately left my face. I couldn't move. I just sat there, paralyzed with fear. But what came next was even worse. Don't look at me like that. My webcam was on. You really shouldn't stare. You might see something you regret. Suddenly, the most horrifying images you could ever imagine flashed on my screen. Images of disemboweled humans, human sacrifice, detached limbs, cannibals eating people, video clips of mass suicides and firing lines. My heart was racing. My body was shaking in utter fear of the images that I was being shown. They are seared in my brain. Those were things that no one should ever see, and I mustered the strength that I had left and I hit the power button on my computer and I slammed it shut. I ran to the bathroom and I threw up a couple times. I was drenched in sweat and I could barely compose myself. It took me about 20 minutes to go back to my computer, and even then, I had a hard time getting near it. I looked over at my client's computer and it was connected to the wireless network that I was cracking earlier. It was working fine now. And just then, my client returned and thanked me for fixing his internet. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my laptop and left. Going down the elevator with my laptop under my shoulder was terrible. I just wanted to leave that place and get my laptop replaced as soon as I could. 5th floor, 4th floor. Come on. 3rd floor, 2nd floor. Come on, god damn it. Ground floor. Open up. And just as the doors opened from behind me, a whisper, "You really shouldn't stare." I immediately left the office building and drove back to my office. I promptly gave my laptop to my boss, telling him that it had become non-functional and that I required a replacement. I told him that someone had accidentally spilled coffee on it during my last trip and that it short-circuited. In reality, I made a pit stop on my way back to the hardware store and bought the most powerful magnet that I could find, and I ran it over the hard drive several times. I wasn't risking that thing ever turning on again. So after a few short minutes of the keep better track of your shit speech, he took the laptop and told me that I would get my replacement tomorrow. And it was probably the most satisfying thing that I could ever hear. For a few days, everything was back to normal. No more AI chat boxes, no more funky unprotected internet connections, and no more disturbing images popping up on my screen. I was safe. Well, until the nightmares started. I remember the first one that I had very vividly, and I shudder when I think about it. But I'll tell you nevertheless. It began with me walking through a large city. I remember seeing large buildings and people walking up and down the streets on their way to work or shopping, whatever it is that city people do. And as I was walking, I found myself in front of a very large building, much taller than the rest, and for some reason, I wanted to go inside and take a look. So, I walked through the front doors and took a look around. It was a fairly normal office building, people moving about, talking on their cell phones and whatnot, minding their own businesses. And I realized that there really wasn't much to see there, so I turned around and leave. But something was wrong. The doors to the building were gone. I walked forward thinking that they were some type of door that blended into the wall or something, but nothing was there, and I found myself very confused. So I turned back around again to maybe ask the receptionist where the exit was, but she was gone too. Everyone was gone. The lobby was empty. No sounds, no people, no furniture, just an empty white room. Now I was scared. I began to panic and pace around the room, looking for any way out, but there was nothing, nowhere to go. So, I began to run at the walls, trying to break them down, but all my attempts were futile. After about 4 or 5 bum rushes against the walls, I sat down, out of breath, looking down at the floor, and it felt like I was there for hours, just staring at the ground, when suddenly, I heard a small whisper. I looked up to see a black silhouette of a man facing me. He stuck out his hand and whispered ever so slightly, "Trying to leave?" For some reason, I trusted this figure. Don't ask me why, it's dream logic, but I felt like this figure was going to show me the way out somehow. So I took his hand and I got up and said, "Yes, can you show me the way?" "Of course, follow closely." He turned around and began to hover away from me, so I followed. I don't know how, but he began to create the hallways and staircases out of the room that I was trapped in, leading me all sorts of ways as if through a giant labyrinth. We climbed up and up and up until we finally reached the hallway that had a door at the end of it. It was then that he stopped moving and turned back toward me. I could make out a faint smile on his face as he pointed toward the door. "Is this the exit?" "It is." I was so happy to finally get out of this place, so I grabbed the door handle and began to turn it as he placed his hand on my shoulder. I turned to look at him, and his words made my heart race to this day. "But remember, you shouldn't ever stare." My eyes widened as his face began to morph into that of a horrible horned creature. His teeth became like razors and his mouth was filled with fire. I threw him off me and I opened the door only to find my worst fears behind it. Dead people were hanging from the ceiling and blood covered the room like wallpaper. I screamed, but nothing came out. I turned away from the room and ran as fast as I could back the way that I came from. But it was not long before I realized that I was hopelessly lost in this labyrinth that the demon had led me through. I ran and ran, but couldn't find the way out. There was no way out. I was trapped in this nightmare. I started hurling myself at the walls in an attempt to leave this evil place, but nothing was working. I thought I was going to die here, and that was when I awoke. I was drenched in sweat, my heart racing and my breathing was heavy. I looked around and it took me a couple of minutes to realize that it was just a nightmare. A horrible, horrible nightmare. I got up out of my bed and walked over to my bathroom to wash myself of all the sweat that I had just doused myself in. And as I washed my face, I noticed something in the mirror. A small light coming from my room. I turned around and I saw it. Sitting at the foot of my bed, my personal computer. I slowly walked over to examine it, thinking I had accidentally left it on before going to bed, which I rarely do. So I bent down and picked it up. The command prompt was open, but it was blank. No prompt or anything. Just that little black box with a white cursor flashing at me. It was then that I remembered that I didn't even use my computer before going to bed. In fact, I had left it in the kitchen. My webcam light turned on. Command prompt began to type. What's the matter? Bad dream? Now, immediately after seeing what had appeared on my screen, I did what anyone else would have done. I removed the battery from my computer, threw it into a safe that I kept in my bedroom, and I locked it tight. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I just sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor, paralyzed with fear. This was no ordinary nightmare. This was real. For the next few days, I had the same nightmare every night, each time as traumatizing as the first, and worst of all, each time after waking up, I could hear my laptop fan inside that safe. I knew what it was doing, but I never looked. I didn't want to see that message again, and I didn't want to scar myself even further. After 3 nights of experiencing that terrible nightmare, I stopped sleeping. I couldn't see those horrible images anymore. I couldn't face that demon anymore. It was too much for me. I kept myself up with caffeine and vitamin B. My motor functions declined and my cognitive ability deteriorated after the second consecutive night. I was so weak, so tired, so afraid. On my 3rd day of self-induced insomnia, my boss walked over to my desk and gave it to me straight. You look like dried up dog shit, man. Go home, go get some sleep. I looked up at him. I wanted to tell him so badly, but I know if I did, he would just tell me to get my shit together and then come back tomorrow. So, I nodded my head in agreement, picked up my stuff and walked out. As I was driving home, I turned on the radio to help keep me awake. I had not slept in almost 60 hours, but instead of my favorite tunes, all that came out of my car's speakers was static. Just a bunch of white noise. I started changing channels, but everything was the same. Static. So, I turned it off and drove home in silence. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed through my front window that there was a flickering light coming from inside my house. It was my TV. I left the damn thing on before leaving to work. I wasn't surprised though. Not sleeping for 2 consecutive nights was definitely taking a toll on me. I put the car in park and started to pull the keys out when my radio turned on again. More static. Was I hallucinating? Christ, I'm losing it. No, you're not. I almost shit my pants. Did that come from the radio? Either I've gone nuts, or that was extremely coincidental. I'm still here, you know. Holy fuck. This time I was sure. That deep static voice just came out of the speakers of my car. I looked at my radio to see what station it was tuned to, but the screen was just a bunch of random symbols and letters that didn't make any sense. I started to panic. I immediately turned the car off and almost ran into my house. No, they couldn't follow me everywhere. I locked my computer in my safe. This couldn't be happening to me. I whipped around to look at my television, which I had forgotten was still on. I swear, I wish that the goddamn Teletubbies were on it. In fact, I wish there was anything on. But there wasn't. It was just static. No sound, no signal, just static. I almost fell over backward in fear. The television sound came in with a huge bang, and the static was very audible. White noise filled the room, and I could feel my heart pounding as my hands began to shake. No, please, no. The static began to get louder and louder until I couldn't even hear myself think. I covered my ears and began shouting to myself, "Stop it! Stop it now! Please!" And it stopped. I looked up slowly at my television. Nothing. Black screen. It was off. I stood up slowly, still shaking from what had just happened, and I walked slowly toward my television, fearing that it may turn on again and blow my eardrums out. I got right up next to the screen, reached behind my TV, and unplugged the power cord. I stared at it for a couple seconds, hoping that I had stopped them from gaining access. I backed away slowly, breathing more evenly now. I stopped it. And that's when I saw that face on my television screen. The black silhouette from my dreams. It was here. It was real. He smiled at me with the most evil smile you could possibly imagine, and I couldn't look away. I was too afraid to move, and suddenly, he began to speak in the most frightening voice imaginable. It was deep and booming, somewhat distorted as if he was speaking through a voice masker. It sounded like 10 voices in one, all as evil as the other.
"Do you fear me?"
I couldn't move.
"I said, do you fear me?"
My body was shaking uncontrollably.
"Do you know these people?"
The next images I saw were the most traumatizing images in my lifetime. I saw pictures of my family, my friends, people I had met throughout my life. He had them. This couldn't have been happening.
"I told you not to stare."
And probably out of sheer adrenaline, I snapped out of my paralysis and picked up a small glass bottle sitting on the table next to me, and I hurled it as hard as I could at the TV. Sparks went everywhere. Shattered glass covered the floor. I looked up at the television, and it was broken. The screen was cracked and it was no longer functioning. The demon was gone. I mustered what strength I had left and walked up to my room. I was so tired. I fell to my knees and I began to cry, when suddenly I heard it. My laptop fan. I slowly raised my head and there it was, sitting on the edge of my bed. Command prompt open, webcam on. The screen said, "That wasn't very nice." I screamed as loud as I could, "Leave me the hell alone!" And I picked up my laptop and I threw it out the window as hard as I could. This was going to end today, and I walked over to the window and I had thrown my computer out to make sure that it was shattered. I wanted nothing to be left of it. But as I looked out the window, I didn't see any broken laptop. I saw him looking up at me, smiling. I backed away slowly from my window. I couldn't think. I couldn't comprehend anything at that moment. He was real. He was here. I backed up into my room, slammed the door shut, and I sat on the floor, trying to formulate some kind of plan of escape from this thing. Or, more importantly, how to rid myself of this demon forever. I immediately stood up. He was knocking at my front door. Again, I heard it. He wanted in. I heard him knocking over and over and over again, incessant pounding on my front door, always in threes. I began thinking frantically, what was I going to do? Should I stay in here? Should I get a weapon? Should I call the police? I didn't know. And the knocking continued. I was pacing my room, desperately trying to think of what to do. My heart was racing, my body purely running on adrenaline at this point, and suddenly, as if perfectly on cue, the knocking stopped. I stopped pacing. Was he gone? Did he just decide to leave? I had to be sure. I slowly opened my door and looked around. Nothing. I moved out of my room and toward the stairs and peeked down. Still, nothing. I slowly moved down the stairs and saw my broken TV and the shattered glass on the floor. Was it over? As I made my way into the living room, I began to feel cold. Very cold. I looked around to see if I could find my thermostat when something else caught my eye. My front door. It was wide open. I swear, I almost had a heart attack. Was he inside? I had no way of knowing, but the first thing that came to my mind was that I had to close that door in case he wasn't. So I quickly moved to the door and slammed it shut. It wasn't cold anymore. I slumped down back against my front door. I was unbearably tired. I needed to sleep more than anything in this world. I just needed to sleep. My eyes began to close. My muscles began to relax. My breathing slowed. And right as my eyes shut and the shroud of sleep began to cover me, his face right in front of me. My eyes snapped open to see his face right up against mine. He was staring at me, smiling. I had no strength left to do anything about it. He slowly stood up and reached out his hand. He said to me the evil whisper of his, "Get up. I want to show you something." I shook my head in disagreement. There was no goddamn way that I was following him. He was going to force me to live that nightmare. He was going to finish killing my mind before he was going to destroy my body. I said, "Get up. You have no other choice." All I could do was look at him. I stared into his amorphous face as if looking right through him. "You know what I can do. Now, get up." He wasn't going to let me die there. He wasn't going to leave me alone. He wanted me for himself. He was right. I had no other choice. So I raised my hand and grabbed his arm. Somehow, as if my legs were moving by themselves, I began to follow him up my staircase. He's going to torture me. We started walking toward my bedroom. The door was shut. As we were in front of my room, he pointed at my door handle, looked at me, and smiled. I knew there was no way out. I had no strength left to run, no strength left to think, no strength left to fear. So I grabbed the handle and opened the door. When I looked inside, expecting to see dead bodies and burning flesh, I saw something that caught me by surprise. It was my laptop, the one that I had thrown out the window earlier. It was sitting on my bed, and the demon walked into the room, stood at the foot of my bed, looked at me and said, "Come, you need to use this device." So, I walked forward once again. As if not by my own will, I sat down in my bed and picked up the computer. Nothing was open, just my desktop with the regular icons. Nothing strange. This, now that I think about it, was probably the strangest thing of all. It has been a very long time since I have spoken with a human. I was too tired to respond. I forgot how fun it was to distort your world and watch you break down in fear. Somehow, I managed to say, "What do you want from me?" I could ask you the same thing. You were the one who brought me here in the first place. I was so confused, so tired. I just wanted him to kill me. I'm not going to kill you. There's no fun in that. I knew what he was saying, and I tried to feel something, but there was no way. I was too depleted, just an empty shell. I'm going to give you two choices now. Two very important choices. I looked at him with the most lifeless stare. Listen closely. Your first choice is to live the rest of your days with me. I could have great fun torturing you for the rest of your life. I had no response. Or, you can choose to send me to another, because I would love a change of scenery. All I could do was stare at him. Then out of nowhere, I found the strength to say, "I hate you." He smiled as I said this. He leaned down, put his face next to mine and whispered, "Make your choice, human." And suddenly, a window opened on my screen. It looked like a sort of VPN client. Some kind of network was being hosted on my computer. And for some reason, the SSID was permanently seared into my memory. 49 20 414 D20 50 41 494 D4 F4 E. For a few minutes, nothing happened. I was the only one in the network. Then out of nowhere, a message box appeared that read, "Someone has joined the network. Would you like to welcome them?" The demon began to smile, and once again he said, "Make your choice." I clicked the OK button, and a little chat box opened up, and I began to type, "Hello." Following that night, the demon that had been haunting me left my life. He vanished as soon as I sent that message, along with the computer sitting in my lap. I wanted to feel remorse for what I have done. Hell, I wanted to feel anything. But all I could do was close my eyes and sleep. When I woke up, I looked at the clock and discovered that I had slept for 26 hours. It was the first night of sleep that I had gotten in 3 days. It had been several years since my experiences with that demon, and I've been using a public computer to write these stories because I was too afraid to own my own again. And it has taken me that long to muster the courage to tell my story to the people of the world, to warn them of that demon that was likely still out there, torturing people for his amusement, forcing them to pass him on to more people through their internet connections. Beware. He was out there somewhere, and he gave no mercy. I opened the application while reading the guide off of my phone. I have never used the dark web before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But my tech friend assured me that if I follow these instructions then I'd be fine. The things I do for my subscribers. I say to myself as I click a link. I'm a horror narrator, and I do a lot of dark web stories, since they're pretty popular at the moment, and I've recently hit 10K subs. So to celebrate, I'm going to be live streaming. But I also wanted it to be dark web related. But since I've never been on there before, now seems like a good time to learn a thing or two. And while yes, I have of course narrated a bunch of stories about the terrors of the dark web, but I know that most, if not all of them, are from writers and not actual events. So it's probably fine, right? I mean, think about it. A secret illegal version of the internet full of evil hackers and serial killers. Yeah, sure fam, whatever. And while scrolling through the links, nothing really seemed too interesting. Yes, there were some dead links, some illegal things on there, but nothing really seemed to catch my eye. Until that is, I saw an ad. Mystery boxes for the brave of heart, not safe for life. Not safe for life, huh? Sounds like an obvious scam to me, but it would be the best clickbait title that I've ever made. Unboxing dark web mystery boxes. I clicked on the link and it led me to a text page with a PNG of a cardboard box on it. The price was only $9.99 including shipping and handling. Yup, definitely a scam, but whatever. I put in my burner account and had it shipped to a PO box to keep all my info safe and then click buy now. If it came, great, but if not, I took a screenshot of the receipt page. I can post it on my Twitter to show that I actually bought something. Now, even if nothing comes, I can just put something weird in a box. Dishonest? Yes, but hey, views are views. But to my surprise, I didn't have to. A package actually came to my P.O. box the day before the stream. It didn't have a return address, and when shaking it, I could tell that there was something in there. While I was curious as to what it was, I would save it for the stream. Of course, I would open it off camera, alongside the fake box, in case there was something inside of it that would get me demonetized for showing on camera. And with that, I set the box near my streaming setup and then went to bed. On the day of the stream, I brewed myself a coffee and I got ready to stream. And when it was time, I took a deep breath and I hit start streaming. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today, we're celebrating me hitting my milestone of 10K subs. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. But, enough of that small talk. I've got a surprise for everyone. I show them the box on camera as I explain. So, a few weeks ago I posted on my Twitter that I did some shopping on the deep web. What I got is supposed to be a mystery box, and today, we're gonna finally see what it is. I put the box down, resting it on my lap off the camera, ready to switch it out if need be. Okay, let's see, and it's... I open the box and I see a book. I take the leather-covered book out of the box and I show it to the camera. A cooking guide for men. I read the title. The red leather book was by someone named Nico Clouks. I sighed in fake disappointment and I said to the camera, Well, I think we got scammed, guys. Well, I didn't expect much from it. I can't say that I wasn't a little disappointed. Is it even a good cookbook? I ask, trying to hold my viewers' attention. If the horror bit wasn't gonna happen, I might as well get a laugh out of it. So with a smile, I turned to the first page. It said, "This book is to help you prepare, season, and cook your meals in a safe and appetizing way. That being said, it's best to leave out certain parts, especially for beginners, as improperly preparing them may lead to severe health problems, including Kuru and prion diseases." I look at the camera with a noddingly approving face and say, Maybe it is a scary book." I say with a slight chuckle. I continued to read until my eyes came across a specific sentence. I scanned the letters and felt my stomach drop. It said, "When preparing human flesh, it is best to ensure that there are no tattoos or other things marking the body, as this affects not only taste but also health." I threw the book down. I felt like I was gonna be sick. I looked up at the camera before realizing that I was still live. I managed to get out some excuse before cutting the stream. And after that, I just sat there, breathing heavily, trying to calm down. And after a few minutes, I managed to slow my breathing before looking back at the book. What was I gonna do with this? After a few seconds of thought, I grabbed the book and a lighter before going to my backyard. And as I watched the fire blazing in the makeshift pit, I knew one thing for sure. I will never order anything from the dark web again. I can't be very detail specific here due to the nature of my job, but I will try my best to communicate the story as best as I can. I work in the cybercrimes division of a law enforcement agency. That's about as specific as I can get. And I want to be clear here. Most of the stories that you read about the dark web are outright fabrications. The tales of the red rooms and the stories of hiring hitmen are practically universally untrue. Most crime takes place on your normal everyday web. One Tuesday afternoon, though, I got a call saying that there was a new case for me. Well, the officer on the other end of the call didn't seem to be too sure that it was a case for me, but wanted me to have a look anyway. I went down to talk to two young boys. Both of them were teenagers, likely still in high school. I was wondering what this was all even about, until one of them started blabbering about something that they got off the dark web. Apparently, the two of them were doing a TikTok or YouTube challenge. I can't care to remember which one it was, but they were looking for things to buy off the dark web. Again, honestly, there's very little actual shady activity that goes on the dark web, unless you want to buy drugs, so the two of them were mainly disappointed. Until they found a site that sold books, one of which they bought. I was then handed the book in question. I put on a pair of gloves and flipped through it. It was filled with photos of a young lady, and initially, they were of her smiling, and in locations such as that of a meadow or a city square. Though as it went on, they became more provocative, for lack of a better term. She began wearing outfits like a maid uniform or a catgirl cosplay, and the last few photos of her were wearing nothing. "Is this all you wanted to show me?" I asked, wondering what the fuss was about. It was then that I was handed a card, one that had come with a book, and it said, "Thank you for your purchase, dear customer. Inside, you can find a treasure trove of photos of a young girl. Though, that's not all that's special about this book. To make sure that it is truly one of a kind, we made sure that you could get the full experience. The book is bound with her skin, so feel free to gently caress the leather as you think of her. Again, thank you for your purchase. At this point, I should probably mention for those who might be unaware what anthropomorphic bibliopegy is. It's the name for the practice of binding a book with human skin. I probably don't need to say this, but it's illegal. Even assuming the skin was from a cadaver, you'd run into laws dealing with human remains. This card, though, from what was written on it, it was made to sound as if the skin had been taken from the girl while she was alive. Well, either that, or she had been killed and then skinned specifically to make this book. I thought the whole thing was an elaborate joke. My first hunch was that the two boys were in on it, but they seemed too scared for it to be a hoax on their end, and I interviewed the two of them separately, and their stories held up. Alright, perhaps they were telling the truth, but that didn't mean that the book was really bound with human skin. Even if it felt like leather, it was most likely animal leather, and all of this added for flavor. I told the officer in charge of the case just that, and said that there was no real need to investigate further, though I did give the young boys a warning regarding buying things off of sketchy websites. And that's when the case ended. Or so I thought. As it turns out, the officer in charge of the case decided that on the off chance that it was real, to get the book tested. And it turned out that the leather binding the book was a matter of fact from human skin. As you can imagine, interest in the case surged after that. We were dealing with a potential murder case now, and we called the two boys back. I was also brought back on board to try to get the root of things, and I was able to get the .tor address of the site they used. And fortunately, all I got was an error message when I used that link. I did some more sleuthing, but that got me nowhere. Frustrated, I turned to other sources for help, but there was little progress that I was able to make. Further analysis of the skin revealed that it did belong to a woman and one of Caucasian descent, which all lined up with what I saw in the photographs. But there was little else that forensics could do as the process of preparing the leather made many tests unviable. A DNA test of the skin didn't reveal anything, and we searched far and wide to see if anyone recognized the girl in the photos, but there was no match till date. The case was about to turn cold when I managed to find an unexpected lead. On a forum that I caught wind of someone else who had purchased a similar book and was confused regarding the veracity of what was claimed about it. It was 3 states over, but we managed to track down the poster, who was a woman who had bought it out of morbid curiosity. Forensic testing revealed that the cover was made of human skin as well. She had a different .tor link, one which I tried, and this one actually worked. The site by itself was nothing impressive. It was as basic as could be, kind of like old sites back in the 2000s. I would have thought that it was a cheap prank based off this alone, but the 2 cases made me hold back my skepticism. I took screenshots of the websites and confirmed with the 2 boys who first came to us with this case that this was the site that we were looking for. Both of the books had been mailed from fake addresses from mailboxes within large cities, so there was little to go on there. Given this, we decided to try the site for ourselves, and I placed an order, only for nothing to turn up. If anything, what happened was that the site's URL no longer worked. And it's here where things took a sinister turn. One of the boys, the one who had actually ordered the book, went missing one day. He was coming back home from school, and then, well, There was no further trace of them. A manhunt for months came up with nothing, until one day, the other boy came to us saying that someone had delivered a piece of paper to his house. It wasn't a normal piece of paper. It was a roll of parchment. Testing later revealed that the skin was human, and DNA testing showed that it was from the boy who had gone missing. Upon it, written with what was later confirmed to be blood, were the words, "Stay out of our business." I don't like to admit this, but that single incident spooked me beyond anything that I've ever encountered. I'm not really used to being in the line of fire. Yeah, I know I'm part of law enforcement, but my work is usually done behind a computer screen. I didn't catch a wink of sleep for 3 nights after what we confirmed what it was. I vividly remember how his mother broke down in tears when we gave her the news. There were no more leads aside from that anyway, and I honestly want nothing more to do with that case anymore. People who would gladly skin someone and then use that skin are not people that I want to be in close contact with. Well, that case might be over, but I'm leaving this here as a general warning. Do not buy things off of the dark web, even if it's more likely a joke than not, because sometimes they might not be kidding. This occurred not long after I turned 18 years old. My girlfriend had just also turned 18 a few days ago, which meant that her parents had finally trusted her and I to be alone in the house while they went out for dinner. My girlfriend had always been a fan of horror films and creepy things in general. She loved reading creepypastas and watching dark and gory films such as Hostel and Saw. One evening, I was sitting with her while she finished watching the last few minutes of The Human Centipede. We both had a few drinks and I was about to go to bed, but she suggested that we look for other horror films to watch online, and despite my tiredness, I obliged. A few minutes of searching on her laptop revealed all of her favorite online film sites had been taken down. Then, that's when she suggested a chilling alternative. "Have you ever heard of the dark web?" she asked. I had heard whispers around school about it, but I never took much interest. "Yeah, I have," I replied, trying to act brave. A smile of excitement appeared on her face. I could tell she was slightly drunk and in that sort of I don't care what happens kind of mood. I decided to go to the kitchen to fetch her some water. And when I came back, I noticed that she had a site open called Sensor View. The site displayed the pictures of movie posters that I had never seen before. I correctly assumed that it was a site that sold banned horror films from other countries. All of them looked pretty unoriginal, nothing that I hadn't seen before. All except for one. The one my girlfriend was hovering the mouse clicker over. And the movie was called The Visiting. The display picture was simply a white background with The Visiting written in Arial black font. We were both fascinated as to what it was. I took my iPhone and searched for the plot of the film, yet I found nothing. Just a few stupid videos in irrelevant forums. However, when I looked back up from my phone, I caught a glimpse of my girlfriend typing in her name and address into various boxes on a page titled Order Details. And before, to my horror, she clicked the submit button. I was caught in a state of anger and shock. I manically shouted at her, explaining how dangerous it was dispersing her personal details into such a messed up place as the dark web. And I could see that my attempts to correct her were futile. as the alcohol was hitting her hard and she was not paying attention whatsoever. Frustrated, I went to bed deciding to discuss it with her the next morning. The next morning, she seemed to have little regret over her actions. She spent the morning explaining how she was curious and she was in no danger. She even commented that the experience would be fun. However, I wasn't convinced. She told me not to tell her parents, fearing that they would not trust her to be alone in the house again. And I promised not to say anything, and I headed back home. 3 days later, I was visiting her house again. Her parents had gone to meet with some friends from work for a drink, and we were watching The Exorcist on DVD. During a particularly non-eventful part of the film, my girlfriend began joking about how horrified I looked a few days ago when we were discussing the dark web. She said she had only received a fairly professional-looking email confirming the order and nothing else. I began to yield to her argument that perhaps I was overreacting. It was merely seconds after our conversation finished that an aggressive knock came from the door. It sounded like it was from 2 doors, but I dismissed this as an echo. I began to look concerned while my girlfriend began laughing once again at the look of terror on my face. I put on a fake smile as I walked towards the door. It erased clean from my face when I saw who stood outside. A tall, stocky man wearing a ski mask and dark clothes stood at the front door, wielding a hammer. I was about to call out to my girlfriend to call the police when a blood-curdling scream echoed throughout the house. I raced back into the room to see my girlfriend pointing at the window facing the garden. An identical man stood at the window, only he was holding a small bat. I grabbed my girlfriend's hand and sprinted up the stairs. We hid in the master bedroom while I called the police on my mobile, who told me that they would be there as soon as possible. And as I finished the call, I heard one of the doors smash and loud rapid footsteps heading up the stairs. They were in the house. Without thinking, I pushed the window open and told my girlfriend to jump, run, and not to look back. She jumped and landed safely onto the grassy garden below. I was about to follow, but I hesitated, wondering if I could put up a fight in doing so, to allow my girlfriend more time to escape. It was then I heard a deep, aggressive voice outside the room. The man shouted something in a foreign language, whilst I heard laughs from 2 other men outside. All bravery evaporated, and I jumped, landing harshly on my ankle. The adrenaline racing around my body allowed me to power through the pain, and I eventually caught up to my girlfriend. We were running for what seemed like hours, but in reality was most likely 10 minutes. We ended up next to a local park, a safe distance away from the house. My girlfriend began sobbing and I comforted her, trying to avoid my own desire to break down. It was not long after that when the police called me on my mobile, they were at the house, and as far as they could tell, the attackers were gone. After taking a few minutes to compose ourselves, my girlfriend and I made our way back. There were 3 police officers at the house. One was examining each room for any damage or evidence left by the men. One was comforting my girlfriend, and while the other asked me questions. The shock was clouding my memory. I was only able to tell them a few details about their clothing and the fact that they spoke in an Eastern European language. My girlfriend handed over her phone and computer for the police to investigate, and then they left. They advised us to tell the homeowners about the situation, lock up, and suggested that everyone spend the rest of the evening with friends or a relative. So we both spent the night at my parents' house while my girlfriend's parents stayed with her friends. I remember my girlfriend crying over the phone while telling them about the situation, and they were furious. A few days later, The police visited my girlfriend. It was by luck that I was at her house that afternoon, and their investigations had led them to some disturbing findings. It turned out that the visiting was a nickname locals in a small Polish town gave to a number of brutal murders that occurred in the 90s in the local area. The murders were committed by an unknown gang and were initially dismissed as home invasions gone wrong. All the victims were bludgeoned to death in their homes, although nothing of value was taken from the house. It was only 2 years after the murders began that a family survived an attack by the gang. The husband was able to give the Polish police a few details of the attackers, but all that he revealed was that they wore ski masks, wielded blunt objects, and one had a video camera. However, the crucial evidence was that one of the attackers had dropped a backpack containing one blank videotape and 3 other tapes with content on them. The 3 tapes showed the horrific murders of the other victims of the attackers. The police came to a shocking conclusion that these men were creating snuff films to be sold to whatever psychos paid enough for them. A nationwide manhunt began, but after years of investigation, nothing was found. I remember feeling incredibly cold as the police told me their findings. They went on to tell me that the men most likely fled Poland during the police search and could possibly have entered the UK as workers when Poland joined the European Union. The only thing they knew for certain was that these men were operating once again, decades after their last murder, and they were using the dark web as a way of deciding on their next victims. The police told my girlfriend's family to move in with a relative while the investigation was ongoing. It was not long after that when my girlfriend broke up with me by her parents' wishes. I assumed her parents suspected me of forcing her into using the dark web. My girlfriend discovered later that various documents containing her information had been taken from the house. So, I'm not allowed to see her, but our parents still speak. From what they tell me, her mental state has become incredibly fragile, and it broke my heart to hear this. I can safely say the police will never find the attackers using the information I gave, which means they will most likely strike again. I can only hope that the next time they do, it will lead to those bastards ending up behind bars and not the creation of another tape to add to their collection. Be safe out there and avoid the dark web. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.